Hey folks, John Boehm here with the Let's Talk Beef podcast. Coming at you again with the podcast here during some interesting times. As most of you probably know, it's social distancing at its finest. So, but we'll get through it, and we'll just continue to move forward, and we'll come out on the other end, and we'll see where we're at. But hope everybody's staying safe and healthy, and getting through these difficult times. And hopefully you got some sort of way to keep going and keep your businesses and whatnot alive and thriving. So hope everything is well. But this week's podcast is a podcast that I recorded back in September. I'm getting a little strung out here with my podcast, so I'm getting a little behind, or just recorded too many, and I'm getting a little, so I've kind of stopped recording to catch up on all the recording ones that I have. And with this social distancing, it's probably a good thing that I got a bunch, because doing new ones face to face is probably on the back burner for a while. But this week's podcast is with Kirk Donsbach of Donsbach Ranch in Roy, Montana. I was actually doing the podcast with Gateway Scimitals, and Kirk was their neighbor, and they said he'd be an interesting guy to sit down and talk to. So we talked to Kirk, and he agreed to do the podcast. And so I went up and spent 2 days with him, and got to see his operation and how he works with multiple different ranchers who share BLM ground, and helped them work calves, and sat down with Kirk. And he also does a commodity marketing firm on the side, helps ranchers hedge their investments and whatnot, and does a little grain stuff, but just helps out with a lot of customers, and try to make sure they can grab as much money as they can in the market. So I think you'll enjoy Kirk. He was a real fun guy. Has been ranching his whole life, or part of it, and just him and his dad bought a ranch, and unfortunately his dad passed away a couple years after they bought the ranch, but that was his dad's life dream and goal, and they were able to accomplish it. So hope you enjoyed the podcast with Kirk. I enjoyed spending time with him, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Stay safe. Thanks. We are here today in Roy, Montana, with, what is it, Donsbach? Donsbach. Kirk Donsbach. What's the population of Roy?
230, I believe.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Man, it looks smaller than that.
Well, that's surrounding area.
The surrounding area. Because how big, because what's because there's a school there. So what's the average class size there? It's pretty.
I'd say the average class was four kids.
Four?
Mm-hmm.
Really? That's crazy. I've heard of some small numbers. That's by far the smallest I've ever heard.
It's a small school.
Yeah. So I'll just let Kirk start here and just get a little introduction about himself, and then we'll go from there.
My name's Kirk Donsbach. I'm married to my wife, Reagan Donsbach, and we have two sons, Blake and Bodie. Blake is a sophomore, and Bodie's an 8th grader.
Okay.
As you said, we're out here in Roy, Montana, ranching. My wife works in town, and I also run a commodity. I'm also a commodity broker. Do that in the mornings, and then go on to the cattle work. I've came home in 2003 and took over after my dad passed away, and have been here since then.
Yeah. So was ranching a big part of your family tradition in there, or how did the ranching part start?
Big part of my family. We probably traditionally were more farmers, actually, with my dad coming from Illinois, mm-hmm. in corn country. He went into the Navy during the Vietnam War, and his best buddy was from Billings, a cowboy from Billings. And so when they both got out of the Navy, he followed him back to Billings, met my mom. He worked in the T-Bone Feeders, I believe it is, out of Billings. And then my mom had his family in Lucetown, Montana, so that created a job offer, and they moved to Winifred, Montana. And that's where I grew up.
Okay.
It's kind of so my dad was a hired man most of my childhood.
Okay.
And then he leased his first place when I was probably a freshman or so.
Okay. So how many cows was he running?
150 maybe, yeah. 200.
So you kind of had them spread out all over the place a little bit, or are they pretty?
At first, when he was working for the guy let him run on his land, so it wasn't too bad.
Uh-huh.
His boss let him run some cows. When we transitioned to him leasing a place, so he quit the hired man job and was on his own, then it seemed like he was constantly chasing grass. I remember going we'd have to cross the river to go into Big Sandy. It was probably 80 miles one way, I suppose.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of took the fun out of it.
Yeah.
It showed you his desire to do it.
Yeah. So, I guess, I mean, you said your dad passed away, unfortunately. I guess, tell me about your dad. What was he like?
Pretty special man.
Yeah.
I think everybody liked him. He's very involved in the community, a very hard worker, probably way harder than I am. I don't know.
There it is.
You want to stop and get that, or what?
Sure, you go for it.
So where were we?
So you were just kind of talking about your dad, hard-working community guy and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss him a lot.
Yeah,
Miss him a lot. Everybody does.
I'm sure. What? You said he was from Illinois, grew up farming.
Mm-hmm.
So how did he fall in love with cattle? I guess just from meeting that buddy and falling into Billings, or did he have a passion for that before that? Or
I don't think he had any experience cowboying. As a matter of fact, I know he didn't. He bought his first saddle after the Navy. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
yeah,
And maybe he was just looking for anything, and his buddy had a job, and
yeah,
dumb luck, so to speak, he stumbled into that.
yeah. So did you? I mean, you're obviously running the ranch now. Do you have? I mean, was your heart in cattle at all growing up? Did you dislike them, or how did?
Probably not, actually. Probably not till, maybe sophomore year in college. I wanted to get away, like a lot of kids do, chase the big dreams. And as I went to college, and of course I had to work jobs at college, and I kind of realized that ranching wasn't such a bad gig, wasn't such a bad deal after all. And then by the time I graduated, that was clearly my intention. And then as I worked on the road for about 7 years, working on power plants, and my sole focus at that point was, try to put enough money together to be able to help my dad buy our own place and come back to our own place.
Because where'd you go to college?
Rocky Mountain College in Billings.
Where'd you go? What were you studying?
Aviation is where I started to
really?
be a pilot.
Did you ever fly anything?
I flew was it a 152, I believe?
Okay.
I soloed cross country and all that stuff, but it just kind of lost its flavor for me anyway. And I knew that I didn't want to do that, pretty quickly into that process, and that moved on to. I just graduated with a business degree then.
Okay. So how did you end up in what was it? Engineering. What was that?
Engineering as a. Oh boy, now you got me. As a electrical designer.
Electrical designer.
Which is.
How did you get into that?
Actually, that's kind of an ironic story too. So
yeah.
I was a senior in college, and my sister was living with us. So it was me and my buddy and my sister and his sister. We were living in a house together. And my
younger sister?
My sister's younger, so this would be the middle sister.
Okay.
I have another younger sister, but she's quite a bit younger. She was 7 years younger, so she was still in high school when we were in college.
Yep.
Anyway, so my middle sister started dating this guy who came into Billings to work on that power plant in Billings, and they needed just some grunt work, pulling cables through trays type of stuff, and so of course being college kids, we needed money always, and so we signed up for the gig, and we both came from ranches, me and my buddy, so we knew how to work. That wasn't an issue, and they fell in love with us, and so when that job was done, they asked us to go on to the next job, and as fate would have it. I had just finished college at the same time, so I took up with them and chased around the U.S. working on power plants. And then kind of as, 2-3 years into it, then, having the degree behind me kind of gave me some advantages, and I was able to get promoted up to electrical designer and in management.
So where did you go? You said you went across the U.S. Where did you go? Were you moving constantly, or like?
Yeah, we'd move about every 2 years. So we were in a spot in one place, say 1.5 to 2 years, we'd move.
Oh, so you'd actually be there for
a little while. Yeah, we'd rent an apartment and all that stuff.
Wow.
We worked in Tucson, Bullhead City, Placa, Florida. The last one, and probably the jewel, if you speak, would be Monterey, California.
Okay.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
We got to eat my wife and I would eat in Clint Eastwood's restaurant
nice.
every now and then. that's really special. That's just an amazing
Were you married at this time?
Yes, we were married at this time. So we got married, I think we were in Tucson, and then we transitioned from Tucson to Monterey with the job.
Yeah. Is your wife from Montana?
She's from Geraldine, Montana, which is just, I don't know, probably 30 miles cross country from Winifred, and probably, 80 or 90 miles from where we are now.
Okay.
She grew up as a farmer.
Okay.
In Geraldine, they ran a grain farm.
Yep.
And she went to Billings also to go to school, so I met her at school.
Yeah. So what was it like moving around the country for a guy from Montana?
It was really fun. For a guy that age, I don't think I would want to do it, with kids or anything.
Yep.
But for a guy at that age, it was a neat experience.
Coming from a small town in Montana, kind of going to these bigger cities, the traveling part was cool. Did you like living in cities and doing that, or
no? I
what city did you like? Or
I didn't like any of the cities.
Didn't like any of the cities?
No. I like Monterey. We were on a condo on the beach when we were in Monterey.
Okay.
Probably a once in a lifetime experience. I'd probably never be able to afford something like that.
Say, probably a little expensive out
yeah,
there.
never again. But it was kind of a treat to us. That was amazing. Okay. Really, we'd walk down to the beach every night, have a fire. It was, I don't know, really amazing.
Did you ever try surfing or anything like that?
I tried surfing, tried I think it's bodyboarding.
Yep.
Or boogie boarding, one or the other. And,
okay.
Wasn't extremely successful. But
no.
Turns out that water in Monterey is really cold too.
Yeah.
It's not very warm, and the weather's only like 70, so it's not
Okay.
It's full wet. It's a wetsuit.
So the vast mountain Montana man didn't take to the water very well.
I love the water, but I don't know if I turned.
Water sports.
I didn't turn into a professional surfer for sure.
So you're doing that for 7 years, you said?
I think it was 7 years. Yeah.
So the whole time you're doing that, your goal is to save money and come back, buy a ranch, or
to buy a ranch with my dad.
So this 7-year quest, is he looking for ranches, or are you just kind of trying to build a nest egg, or kind of whatever happened first? Or
I think he was looking for a ranch his whole life, probably.
Yeah.
And then he got, the Big Sandy lease I talked to you about just was, like, it was kind of the final straw, at least for me. That just wasn't sustainable. Mm-hmm. I wasn't interested. I loved ranching at that point, but I didn't want that type of situation. It wasn't for me or for him. So I think
it was too far away.
Yeah, you spend all day to go put out salt and mineral because you're driving all day.
Yeah.
So I think that, is either we need to try it or at least for me, it was we need to try to buy something and hope we can hold it together or give up on it. Mm-hmm. And, especially because that was a really good job I had. So, it didn't really make a lot of sense to leave that just to lease a place.
Yeah.
But now if you buy a place and it's your own, that kind of changes the equation.
Yeah. So did you find the place that we're on now, or did your dad find it, or how did?
Dad found it. I'd come home or whatever, and we'd look at them. We looked at one out of Glasgow. We looked at one down on the Musselshell River, and then this one. Those are three that I looked at, and I'm sure Dad probably checked into some more.
Mm-hmm. So what drew you to this one, or did you kind of have a pick between them, or did this was the one that finally?
I guess you'd say we kind of had a pick. I mean, we could have tried to buy any of them. The other three were. The one had some issues that weren't great for our family. I don't, not to get into that and speak against anybody. The one in the Musselshell was a really nice place on the river, lots of good grass and irrigation and all that, but it was just miles. I mean, it was like 60 miles and you're at Winnett, and then another, whatever to get to Billings or Lewisstown. My mom was a nurse, and my wife always wanted to work, so it just kind of eliminated any of that.
Yeah, too far to drive.
Yeah, so just it didn't really work for the wives, the one at the Musselshell. And then this one kind of checked all the boxes.
Okay. So you guys bought this in what, 2000?
2000.
2000. So were you both living, like you and your wife and your dad and mom all living on this place, or were you on a different location for a while? Or?
I was still traveling. I traveled. My wife and I traveled till 2003.
Oh, okay.
She was pregnant and actually came home must have been later 2003. I'm not sure. Later 2002. We had a trailer set up here where this house is now.
Okay.
So she came home to be here, to go through childbirth. So that's pretty tough.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then my dad got sick and passed away in 2003, and then I came home. Before he passed away, I was home probably 6 months or so before he passed.
Yeah. So what did he have?
Cancer.
Cancer. Yeah, that's too bad. How old was he?
54, I believe.
Oof. But he got to buy a ranch.
Yeah, he got his dream. Not very long, but he got to own a ranch for 3 years.
I bet he had a pretty big smile on his face when you guys signed the papers or whatnot.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did.
That was pretty cool. So you came back and kind of took over doing what he was doing, or did you kind of start making changes and kind of finding your own path?
No, I think the first couple of years were to do it exactly. When you step into that situation, you don't know what you don't know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so the first couple of years were definitely just doing it how he did it, until I kind of learned the stuff that I didn't even know I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gradually started changing the cows a little bit. Got a little bit bigger. I was probably a little more aggressive, maybe because of the job that I had, and it wasn't so hard to make money for me as it was Dad. It was so hard, being a ranch hand, to put money together.
Yeah.
So I was probably willing to take a few more financial risks than he was, which is, not just the way it was.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I think it's a lot different. I don't know, that's a hard question.
Yeah. So how does this ranch that we're on right now, how does it how big is it? What do you how many cows do you run here?
We run about 450 cows, mother cows. We got a hay base and some irrigated ground in Lewiston, Montana. That's, fourth generation, I believe.
Yep.
So that's kind of the hay base. And then this is pretty much grass. I do a little bit of hay out here, but the soil is not the most ideal for farming. So it's really ideal for native grass, but not so much for trying to grow alfalfa.
Yep.
And a little bit arid also. So the two kind of lend themselves together pretty well.
Yep.
We utilize AUN or BLM ground pretty extensively within the grazing district. Kind of put it all together.
Your bird wants to talk.
I don't know what to do about the bird. I can cover him. You want me to cover him?
It's up to you, but we'll just.
I can try.
It is what it is.
You said you didn't edit much. I'm going to prove you a liar on this one.
So how big is the home base here?
Acres wise?
Yeah.
There's probably about 1,000 acres right here.
Right here.
And then we're spread out probably over 20 miles or 30 miles or so.
Do you summer cows here, or do you?
No, pretty much just winter.
Just winter cows here?
I bring, the heifers are here, eating some residual hay, second cutting type of stuff. But most all the cows leave all summer.
Okay. And then today we were over at your BLM ground, working cows. How many cow calf pairs did we catch today?
We did in total about 200. The pastures are common, meaning there's multiple guides in the pasture.
Yep.
I had about 65 in that pasture that were mine.
So how many total did we catch?
About 200.
About 200. So we found 200 pairs out of what? 200,000 acres of pasture?
No, probably
20,000.
Probably 20,000, yeah.
That's what Jeff said. 20,000. 200,000. I got a little ahead of myself there.
That's a big pasture,
That's
200,000.
That would have taken us it took us 4 hours to gather them?
Yeah, straight across it.
Yeah, 4 hours to get them in, and then it took us another 2.5 to work them probably. So, it was a good day. We hammered it out pretty sweet, but, so how did you get the BLM land? Did you have to apply for that, or how does that come to be that you have that pasture over there?
So BLM land is attached to deeded acres, and when you buy the deeded acres, you also pay that guy for the BLM rights that are attached to that deeded. So when we bought the place that we're on now, it had those rights attached to it.
Okay, so the guy that was ranching here essentially was running those same pastures that you're running now.
So those were essentially, and I bought other people's, but to simplify, those were his AUMs.
Okay.
his BLM rights. And when we bought this place, which had those rights attached to him, they came with it.
Could he have sold them separately?
He could have split them off and sold it to somebody else,
Uh-huh.
and then they would have been attached to that person's
Yeah.
BLM or to their deeded. That's really the bulk of the value in this place is BLM. So in this, in that situation, it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. So you said that you do some commodity broking. How did that start, or how did you start doing that, I guess?
So back to my road job when I was money coming pretty easy. I always liked the markets and wanted to know more, and of course having this job and no kids at the time and per diem paid for all my living, so I had a little extra money, and so I just started speculating. To be honest, I didn't gamble very much, a couple thousand, and kind of learned the tools and how it worked and all that, and also learned that even though I was right about 80% of the time in the market, I'd lose more than I made when I lost. So I ended up at an even. So it turned out that wasn't going to be an extra source of income for me, speculating in the markets.
Mm-hmm.
Then when my dad got sick and I came home, I transitioned what I learned away from speculating into hedging. And so I was hedging my own stuff for about 14 years. At some point I wanted to be more involved. Some of the ranch mental challenges, I'd kind of figured most of them out. Obviously, there's always new stuff, but the big ones I'd kind of figured out. And I was looking for more of a additional mental challenge, and I thought that would be a good way to do. And so there was a lady from Texas giving a presentation in Loosetown, and I talked to her about it, and it kind of went from there. And I ended up being because of regulation, you can't halfway be a broker. You've got to go all the way. So at the end of the day, I ended up being a registered commodity broker and then licensed with a company in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by like a half broker or a half-time broker? What did you like? What was your plans, or what did you?
Well, my plan was to somehow get paid for just helping people, not actually taking orders.
Okay.
But, say Joe Blow would call me up and say I need to get rid of some risk. How do I do it? Mm-hmm. And then I'd go talk to him and explain the tools of it.
Yeah.
And then somehow I'd get paid for doing that.
Yeah.
It turns out with the CFTC regulations, you can't do that.
Okay.
You got to if you're going to talk about markets and give advice outside of education, you've got to be a registered broker, or you can't do it.
So what does I know the terminology of it. It's like what is hedging? Like what is hedging? Like how simplify it down as best you can. What does that kind of mean? What are you doing? Oversimplified,
we take a financial instrument that'll move the opposite way that your cash position does, or the calves will, or yearlings, or whatever you have, or wheat. And so this instrument, if wheat is losing money, this instrument will make money. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's also true that if your cash is making money, this instrument will lose money. Mm-hmm. But it's just a way to lay off some of the risk in those times when you can't forward contract or you don't want to or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So you're a commodity broker. So what commodities do you work in?
Primarily cattle, but I do some grain also for guys. I don't grow any grain, and it's definitely not my focus. Cattle is clearly my focus, but we do trade some grain contracts. So
you're running, what'd you say, like 430 cows?
Yeah, about 450.
450. And so you selling them just basically as feeder calves?
I guess technically they'd probably be considered stockers because they're 600 pounds. That's kind of a fine line. I don't know that it really matters. But they typically are bought by a feedlot, and then sometimes they're put on grass for a little bit and then put on feed, or sometimes they go straight to feed, depending on the market variables and what that guy wants to do.
Yeah. So are you doing all your own marketing that way and then doing your own brokering?
I do my own brokering. I still use a cattle buyer to market the actual calves. Mm-hmm. She's got the contacts with all the feedlots in Iowa and Colorado and Nebraska and such. So she connects that feedlot with me.
Gotcha.
Because it doesn't seem like I've been told, an old guy around here once told me you can own a buyer relationship only lasts 3 years typically, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. So you need to network outside of the guy that bought them last year at some point.
Yeah. Why 3 years?
I don't know why he said that, but it seems to be true.
Yeah. They just get tired of you or something?
Well, no, not that. I think if you think about it, our objectives are opposite, right? I'm trying to sell at the high, and he's trying to buy at the low.
Yeah.
And so, maybe it's just a law of averages. You're only going to agree 3 times in a row.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I think it's a high of the market, I want to sell them. If that guy doesn't want to buy them, I'm going to find somebody else because I want to sell them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And so, it's probably me more moving on than him, I suppose.
Yeah.
And vice versa. For example, this year the calf market is not very good, and at times really poor, and I didn't want to sell at them at that time, and he wanted to buy. Obviously, that's in his best interest. I understand that.
Yeah.
And so he probably moved on and bought somebody else's calves.
So you sold the calves already. Did you hedge against them, or how does
So it's kind of inverted hedge. After you sell, I use an inverted hedge,
okay.
So to speak. So I buy them back on paper. So I sold them, not for what I needed, to be honest. And so I wanted to stay in the game in case, the China trade deal came through or, who knows what. And so I bought them back on paper. It cost me about 2.5 cents to do that. And then if the market rallies far enough, it will return money to me. And vice versa, if it keeps going down, which it actually did, the calves are sold and I lose 2.5 cents, so I can live with that. And if you take, my example, not to say what I sold them for, but since I sold them, they're worth at least 10 cents less, if not more, 10 to 12 cents. Now, granted, if the market doesn't keep rallying, I'm going to lose my 2.5 cents. But if you compare the 2.5 cents I lost versus the 10 cents I would have lost if I had not sold them, I'm still further off ahead. Yeah. And I've got time. The tool I bought doesn't expire till November, so it still could work.
So you got your own hedging business. So you got quite a bit of clientele, or is this pretty? How long have you had your broker's license, and how have you been growing that?
I think 4 years. A lot of it's word of mouth. I produce a weekly newsletter. Just it's kind of a data dump, if you will. I try not to get too much opinion in it. It's mostly kind of the raw data from the week.
Yeah.
That's in that every Sunday I put that out, and that seems to be the best tool I have for getting, word out about what I'm doing. Typically, it takes about a year of somebody reading it before they develop the trust and the comfort with me to give me that call. And then I do a lot of presentations also. I've done several for bull producers. They like to have a customer appreciation dinner, so they'll bring me in to talk. I've done some stuff with a superior rep. We went down around Cascade, kind of down the Rocky Mountains and several towns. I've done some with the cattle buyers, same type of thing. Customer appreciation dinner. They pay for the dinner, their clients come in, and I give a presentation. And then banks. I've done quite a few for banks, trying, where the banks, it's really a customer appreciation dinner, but they're trying to get people to manage their risk.
I guess I'm going to go back a little bit because I just thought of something. So you said that you have a hay base in Lewistown, and it's a 4th generation. So how does that play, that you have a 4th generation farm down there?
So that all started ironically. So it'd be the White family, and they actually homesteaded about 10 miles north of where we're sitting in our house here at Roy.
Okay.
And then I don't know the year, but they basically were starving to death out here. So they picked up their cabin. They actually hauled their little, 8 by 8 foot cabin into Lewistown,
which is 45 miles?
Probably from there, probably 60.
60? Wow.
I don't know how, I can't even comprehend how they did it back then.
A horse and wagon?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know. So anyway, they moved it in there, and I can't remember the details, but they bought that property in Lewistown. He must have been maybe leasing it and then bought it. I'm not sure. But it's very nice ground, right on Spring Creek, irrigated hay ground. I know my grandfather had ran a dairy on it, ran a pig farm on it.
So this is your mom's side?
This is on my mom's side.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not real big. So it was, until I kind of put all the pieces together, it was never enough by itself to sustain a family.
Uh-huh.
Just 110 acres. But when you combine it with the grass we've got out here, it's just a marvelous fit.
Mm-hmm. So your grandfather bought it from the Whites?
So my great grandfather would have bought it
from the Whites.
Well, no, he would be a White.
Oh, he was a White.
They might have the name they bought it from might have been Crowley, but I'm not sure on that.
So your mom's okay. So then your great grandfather farmed there, and your grandfather, and
then my dad, and through a lease, my dad leased it.
Okay.
And then I bought it from my mom's sisters.
Okay. So you got a little bit of a drive to get some hay.
Yeah.
But it's good ground, so you get good.
Yeah, it does. About 5 ton a year, and out here in Roy, you're just not going to see that. That would be you'd have to do probably 600 acres to get 500 ton of hay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can go in there and do 110 acres twice.
Yeah.
And get it. Now I do have to truck it, and that's kind of a bugger, but
yeah. But you're not going to get that anywhere.
No, you're not gonna do that in Roy.
Yeah. So now, I mean, you're doing the cattle thing and you're doing the broker thing. So what's the future look like for both of those? I mean, are you gonna try to expand the ranch at all, or do anything different, or just?
No, I definitely don't. I don't think I want to expand the ranch. It's an age-old issue. When you're doing the work, you've got too many cattle. When you're going to the bank, you don't have enough.
Yeah.
But I think I got plenty enough work,
mm-hmm.
and I think age plays into that. I just don't know if I want to work any harder than I am right now as far as size-wise goes.
Yeah.
So I think the ranch is big enough. I'd love to grow the broker side of it, and maybe the boys want to take over more of the ranch, or
Are the boys interested?
Not especially yet. It doesn't concern me at their age.
Yeah.
I think sports and girls and video games is. I don't know if a ranch can compete with that just yet at their age.
Sounds pretty good.
But I think they might be later on.
Yeah. So where does the brokerage firm go? I mean, you just trying to keep growing your clientele base, or trying to do more commodities, or?
Yeah, just more clients.
Yeah.
Just more clients all the time.
Yeah.
I'm real proud. I've got 100% retention, so I've not lost any clients, and I think that's probably if I can maintain that in a real slow growth, it'll get where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. So how long? I guess quickly going back, what does it take to? What do you have to do to get a broker's license? Is there classes, or you just kind of take a test, or?
There's online classes is how I did it. I don't know if any colleges offer any classes. They call it the Series 3, I believe. It's an extensive test. You got to take it in Billings at one of those testing facilities,
mm-hmm.
With pretty regulated environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard test.
Yeah.
Probably not like a bar exam type of test,
yeah.
but it's pretty serious nonetheless.
So did you get it done in one shot?
I did pass it in one shot.
Nice. That's got to be a relief.
It was.
You didn't have to go back. Because I'm sure you have to pay to take the test. So.
And then it turns out I had to, because I'm here by myself. I'm considered a branch manager also. Although I'm not managing a branch, right? It's just here I am. But technically, from the CFTC, I'm a branch manager. So after I got my Series 3. And lo and behold, I had to go take another test to be a branch manager. So I had to do it. I had to do it all over again twice.
Didn't see that coming at all.
No, I did not.
Huh. So I guess transition just a little bit here. I guess as a guy in the beef industry and even in the brokerage side, I guess what are you seeing right now in the beef industry? I mean, where do you think it's going? What do you like? What don't you like? What concerns or what worries you, I guess, about the beef industry, or what positives do you got about it right now?
I think the positives are obviously the efficiency, largely genetic. Some of the efficiencies that we've developed in the agronomy side of it, as far as hay, the mineral packages, there's just been so much advancement in all that health and everything to do with the cow. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what we're producing now with one cow or with 1 acre land versus what we were 40 or 60 years ago. As you mentioned before, we spent all day preconditioning calves today, and some of the guys were older, and they'll tell you how their dads raised calves that weaned 400 pounds, and now we're 600-700 pound calves.
Mm-hmm.
They do eat a little more grass, but it's not it's not linear. It's we're getting way more pounds per pound of grass than we were before.
Mm-hmm.
So much more efficient, and that really ties in everything: genetics and animal health and just everything in the industry.
Yeah.
My biggest concern, kind of the hot topic right now in the industry, is the leverage that the packer has over the feeder.
Yeah.
And in essence, since we're underneath the feeder over us,
Mm-hmm.
because they're passing the pain on down to the cow-calf guy.
Yeah.
Their profit margins are pushing $400 a head. They own the calf, they own the animal 10 days maybe, and we're probably, between both segments, we're probably losing that a head.
Yeah.
So it's clearly not sustainable. I don't know what the solution is, but it's clearly not sustainable.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this kind of fake meat thing going on right now?
The fake meat thing doesn't concern me. To be honest, I can't wrap my mind around. You're talking about the soy-based fake meat, right?
Yeah, the
Impossible Burger.
Whatever.
I think the real trend in health is all natural. The closer we get to all natural, the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you can't argue that. It's got to pay for me, so we could have an economic discussion from the rancher side.
Yeah.
But from the customer side, if you're not concerned with price and just health, all natural, I don't know how you would argue that's not the best. And so then when you look at the soy burger and the chemicals that they use to process that and the salt that's in it, I don't think that that's a real threat to real meat.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fad. It's a hot topic. It's cool. We saw what their shares did. They went through the roof because it was the new thing. But I don't think it has staying power.
Mm-hmm.
The vegetarians, it's great for the vegetarians. I think it's the best product they got out there. But we're not trying to capture market share of the vegetarians.
Yeah.
We're worried about the people that eat hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a real threat. The lab meat or the cultured meat scares me. I think we're a long ways away from that being a threat. But if they can make a real product out of a petri dish, and it is the exact same product, that's scary.
Yeah. So you said health-wise there wasn't an argument you didn't think, but economically you thought there might be between the economics all natural. So what do you mean by that? Or what?
Well, the tools that we use to increase efficiency, growth hormones, and antibiotics, obviously, those obviously add efficiency to us. So at the end of the day, it's just a scale.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't use these things, it's going to cost me this much. And so how much is the customer willing to pay me over, how much? What's the difference between an all-natural animal and one that's not? And once that's justified, I have no doubt that every rancher in the U.S. would go to all natural if it was justified. If the math was clear.
Yeah.
It's simply a math equation.
If it pencils out,
Yeah.
they'll go.
I think it's important to keep in mind. We're not talking about making a bunch of money and we go all natural so we make a little less. We're talking about losing money, and so if to go all natural and lose a little more is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
If margins were huge, it wouldn't be a debate, but they're not.
Yeah.
Margins are extremely thin.
Mm-hmm.
And so to give up that efficiency can mean the difference between making money and losing money.
Yeah. So in keeping with kind of my podcast, kind of hopeful eventual theme of, this being an outlet for consumers to get to know producers across the country is kind of where I want to go with this. What advice or you kind of talked about a little bit there with the fake meat stuff, but I guess what do you wish the consumers knew that they don't know, or what misconceptions do you think got that, what misconceptions do they misunderstand the most, or?
I think the big one is the carbon footprint. There's this big push not to eat meat because of the carbon footprint. And I think most consumers don't realize where these calves spend most of their life. If you drive out here to Roy, and I hit on it a little bit, this is not farm ground.
Yeah.
The only way to utilize this ground, and there's millions of acres across the U.S., is with an animal that eats it.
Yeah.
Because you cannot farm it.
Yeah.
People have tried; it does not work. And so, to move away from meat is you can't utilize this massive amount of acres in the U.S. without meat, without consuming meat.
Yeah.
And so it's not, to switch to a totally soy diet or a vegetable diet. I just don't think we could produce enough because you're leaving millions of acres or of a resource that's untapped.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I never thought about it. Like now seeing, like this is my first time in Montana, so like seeing the vastness out there, like just wide open spaces, big sky country.
Sure.
Like I definitely get it more now than ever before. It's just, I mean, I can't even tell you how many sagebrush plants I saw today. Like it was just millions and millions of them everywhere. But yeah, if you don't have that kind of ruminant animal to take advantage of that grass and convert it into a protein, that's pretty. You think about that science, that's pretty amazing what it can do. And it just to just go away from it and just let that grass do what? Just grow and do nothing.
What's ironic is in the 30s, during the Depression, everybody was hungry, right? Or the majority of people were hungry. And you were staying in Lewistown and then driving out here, so you've seen Lewistown and how beautiful Lewistown is.
Yeah.
And it's just the most perfect habitat you could almost design. And you've probably seen all the deer in the town and on the bottom. There's just deer everywhere.
I was at the library and like literally mule deer were walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah, in town.
Like just, I looked up, I was like, here comes a deer.
So in the 30s, when people were hungry, the deer were, I'm going to say hunted, but that's not what they were hunting them, but it wasn't a sport. I mean, they were providing food for their family with them.
It was need.
Right. So there was a need for protein, and they basically wiped out the deer population in Lewistown. And so, I mean, to think that you would eliminate beef and not end in that same environment. Now, obviously, nature abhors a vacuum, so obviously wildlife's going to fill this vacuum. And people are going to would eat the wildlife. I just have no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah. But with wildlife comes the act of hunting it yourself.
And the loss of the efficiencies that we talked in the cattle.
Yeah.
Because now you're killing an animal to get 100 pounds of meat or 150 maybe.
Yeah.
Versus a cow that's 1,200 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of different, very interesting stuff. So as a guy who, so when did you start ranching?
I came home in 03. I grew up on a ranch, so basically my whole life. But
so how old were you when you came back in 03?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Must have been 30-ish.
30-ish. So what? That's relatively young, I guess, compared to I would say most ranchers. So what advice do you have for young guys getting in the business, or do you think is that an impossible thing right now, or with the way things are, it's kind of tough out there?
It's not impossible.
Yeah.
Ironically, this may provide opportunity. If you were starting from nothing and you had to buy cows right now, and you could find grass and all the rest, I mean, what a good time to buy cows.
Yeah.
So every gray cloud has a silver lining in the market. It's actually probably an ideal time to start a cow herd.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy, and you probably would need a second source of income, obviously.
Yeah.
Because this opportunity won't show the returns until the market turns back up. So you'd have to survive however many years or months or whatever that was. I mean, it will swing back up. It always does. But you'd have to figure out a way to survive that.
Yeah. What aspect of ranching are they missing out on?
To me, it's of course, I'm a commodity broker, so I'm biased probably. But to me, it's clearly marketing.
Yeah.
We'll spend hours and hours on calving. Look at the work we put into calving to eliminate to reduce our death loss of calving, and you work really hard and you might reduce your death loss from 4% to 3%. So you're driving a 1% margin basically. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking months. You'll spend months, 24 hours a day trying to do that.
Yeah.
Where one shift in the market might be 30 or 40% margin difference.
Yeah.
And we'll spend just a few hours worrying about that.
Yeah.
So based on the consequences of the return, I think most people should spend probably substantially more time on marketing, just relative to how important it is to our bottom line.
So I guess as somebody who, say, just doesn't really, like you said, doesn't spend a lot of time marketing, what should they be doing? Where should they be looking, or what resources are there for them to kind of expand on their marketing opportunity?
There's numerous resources. Obviously, there's multiple video auctions like Superior and Northern, multiple buyers. I think the more people you talk to, everybody's got an opinion. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but everybody's got an opinion, and you can gather all that. I mentioned my newsletter, and there's lots of different other newsletters out there that people produce. There's unlimited stuff on the internet. Mm-hmm. There's courses that the colleges put on. There's guys like me that go to these presentations for the banks and stuff. So there's a lot out there. It's just the desire to learn it is probably the key, not the lack of availability.
Yeah. So you much of a roper?
No, I'm not a roper.
No?
I wanted to be at one time, but
yeah.
Roping to me is like golf. When I don't care, I do real well, and then I start, man, I'm kind of good at this, so I start trying, and then it all goes to pot.
So did you ride horses your whole ranching career?
Yeah, I grew up on a horse pretty much.
Yeah. So how many horses do you got?
What do we got? I think we got 6 of them.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're kind of you're a bigger guy, so you were out there running around on a horse today. I was a little surprised, to be honest with you. I mean, not that I have anything to say or compare it to, because I didn't grow around horses, but and you got a pretty big horse. I mean, he came off the trailer, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, he's a tall bugger.
Yeah.
All iron sides.
Iron sides? That's quite a horse. So, I don't really have much more to say, or I guess that's kind of a wrap up there. I think it was I really liked your broker side. That's a very interesting side. Now, most people don't know, like you said, they don't spend a lot of time marketing. So just being like you said, you wanted some more kind of mental game to play, and you found commodity brokering, and that's kind of a cool little, I guess you can call it a niche market a little bit, just in a rancher that does it on the side. So that's very cool and interesting, and I hope that I hope that you're using it to help guys out and trying to do what you wanted to do with it, and I think that's pretty commendable. So
I appreciate that.
That's cool, and I also want to say thank you very much for allowing me to come out and hang out with you for 2 days and move corral panels, and then today we work cattle. Me just showing up with Jim and in the trucks and saying, "Hey, you want to do an interview with this guy?" And I'm sure we're pretty hesitant on like, what the heck is this? But I'm glad you said yes, and I'm glad we got to come up here and check this out. It's definitely it's interesting because like with Gateways that I was with earlier this week. I mean, their ranch is in Lewistown, but then they go to the mountains for grass, and then you're here, but then you go to the BLM for grass. So it's kind of a same but different scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so very cool to see kind of both sides, and they definitely talked highly of you and your brokering stuff. So it was definitely a good find of finding you, and hopefully you enjoyed my time, my help, my work, whatever you want to call it. So
anybody that'll help us move panels is welcome.
It was good. So Kirk, once again, thanks so much for letting me hang out with you for a couple of days and sitting down and doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We'll talk to you later.
All right, see ya.
Yeah. And there you have it, folks. That was Kirk Donsbach of Roy, Montana. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to the podcast. And again, if you get a chance, go out there and give me a rating on iTunes and whatnot. And share and like me on Facebook and Instagram. It really helps me out and spreads the word. And we'll go from there. So stay safe, guys. Thanks. Bye.